Radhe Radhe. Today is Saturday, May 7, 2022. We had a special extra session to make up for time that might be lost for events coming up later. But Mummy and I are here now to present a recap video for today's special 2-hour long Bhagavad Gita study session.
Radhe Radhe.
Starting to share the screen, and we'll get ahead and look at the quiz questions that we covered. Everyone can take a look later, but we had 5 quiz questions. And then we covered chapter 5, verses 16, 17, 18, and 19. 18 and 19 fairly related. We'll get to them shortly. Chapter 5, verse 16 first, talking about the power of illumination, light, the energy that provides from a spiritual sense. So we saw in the verse in the Bhagavad Gita that if you have divine knowledge, then we have an analogy, just like the sun illumines everything in daytime, then that divine knowledge helps illumine our inner selves. It takes us away from material things and it takes away our ignorance. And that helps us to see the supreme entity. So there is the verse from the Ramayana that helps explain that also in Swamiji's commentary, that even with the full moon's combined light and the visible stars, it's not enough to take the darkness of the night away. But with dawn, the sun helps the night make a hasty exit. There's an example also given of watching a movie. We see that it is obviously mistaken sometimes to be reality, but it's just an illusion for 2 to 3 hours. An important English word I'll mention is reverie. We talked about that as being in this state of daydreaming or sleep. And so we want to disconnect ourselves from that. We heard Sunilji talk about the Sakshi Bhav effect sort of when watching a movie. It's a good example there. And it is through God's spiritual energy, Vidya Shakti, that we would like us to be illumined with the light of knowledge versus being attached to Avidya Shakti, material energy. Quick reminder also we made was to chapter 4, verse 37. Again, that fire of divine knowledge, helping us break away from the reactions of material bondage and activities. Chapter 5, verse 17, the catchphrase there being a tad tanned, talking about how we would like more spiritual light upon all of us. When it gets to Mummy's turn, we'll quickly see the 4 important Sanskrit words here that were introduced in this specific verse. But the idea is that there are certain qualities that we would like to have directed towards God that then again help us move away. It's a point of no return in a good sense. We move away from ignorance and go towards, again, the supreme goal. So that is chapter 5, verse 17. And then we had chapter 5, verse 18, I Spy. We talked about this as, the little game that kids play, but the variation here being that it would be an extremely short game if we genuinely look at things with equality of vision, recognizing every living being as an eternal soul and a tiny fragment of God. Then that game becomes, I spy a beautiful soul around. People can point at anything, anyone. And that's really that spiritual game there. So chapter 5, verse 18, very, very pivotal. The truly learned with the eyes of divine knowledge, pragnya chakshu, they are able to then recognize all living beings with equal vision. The examples from Sri Krishna are that of a Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. Again, all to be recognized as eternal souls. Therefore, similar in that spiritual sense. We talked about the important aspect of Vinaya, meaning humbleness or having humility. I think Mummy mentioned in one of the verses that having a guru is, of course, a very, very important aspect. So a spiritual master whom, if you recall from chapter 4, verse 34, we need to approach and look at, approach with humility, inquire also with humility, right? So you approach a spiritual master, inquire with humility, and then the last part, render service unto the guru. So that becomes very important. And it is through a guru, through a spiritual master, through how we get this ability to eventually one day have this equality of vision. So again, very, very important. And we also had a reminder of the 4 categories of occupations. Way earlier from chapter 4, verse 13, Chaturvarnyam. So a reminder here that even the Vedas, they don't talk about higher or lower castes. It's different proportions of the 3 modes of material nature, the gunas that are in different people. And through our nature of actions, we have a certain category of occupation and certain duties. So again, something to stress importance on. Chapter 5, verse 19, finally, over here, I win. Again, the use of the word I, E-Y-E, in this case being that with that equality of vision, we can win or we can conquer samsara, that repeated cycle of birth and death. Mummy, in fact, mentioned very, very important that in this verse, we see that Sri Krishna mentions that when you have that equality of vision, then in this very life, one can actually conquer the cycle of birth and death. We talked about Sthita Prajna, stage of steady wisdom. Here again, we're seeing that Sri Krishna mentions that if we can get away from associating ourselves or thinking of ourselves as the body, then we can get towards equality of vision. We get away from bodily pain, pleasure, discomfort, and using the example from the Ramayana, just serve, completely with devotion, serve God, and then get into that divine consciousness. Mummy, I'll pass it to you to take us through any additional commentary on these 4 verses, any important Sanskrit words for people to study, and so on.
So let's start with the 4 words which are given in verse number 17. So very important words here. First word is Tad Buddhayaha. Tad Buddhayaha means whose intellect is directed toward God. Then Tad Atmanaha. Buddhaya was with buddhi, intellect. Atmanaha with the whole antakaran, the whole machinery, heart, mind, and intellect, solely absorbed in God. Then Tan Nishthaha. Nishtha means loyalty or firm faith. So those whose intellect has firm faith comes from intellect. Once your intellect is satisfied, then you are established in firm faith. And then the 4th word is Tatparayana. Tatparayana means we completely agree that this is our supreme goal, and then we are going to take refuge in it, or we are going to surrender. That is God. And then Gagan talked about 2 more words, that is Tad Chintanam. That means those who keep on contemplating, and Tad Kathanam. That means those who keep on talking stories about God. So these are the different ways whereby Krishna is giving us these tools now, that through these tools, you can put your mind, heart, and intellect in God, absorbed in God, have firm faith. And this is how you can dispel the ignorance which is covering your knowledge. You are part of fragment of that superior supreme divine soul. So you have that knowledge. Of course, you don't have perfect knowledge, but whatever knowledge you have, that is also being covered with ignorance. Now with these tools, you can start to fully get absorbed in God, and slowly that cover can be taken off. Then I want to talk about 2 important words, Sanskrit words. One is Nirdhut. Nirdhut means dispelled. Dispelled means how they are taken away. That ignorance is taken away. So Nirdhut. And another word I want to talk about is, that is Samdarshinaha. Samdarshinaha means, Sam means equal, Darshinaha means to see. So we must have equal vision for everybody. That's what we have learned in this verse number 18. Very important that we must try to learn that everybody is a soul. Once we are in that knowledge of the self, that we are not the body, we are soul. And so we start seeing that same soul is in every different kind of species, different kind of body. So we have to learn to see with the Pragnya Chakshu. Pragnya Chakshu means with the eyes of knowledge. So once we have this divine knowledge, then we will start seeing everybody samdarshinaha, meaning we will start seeing everybody with equal vision.
Thank you, Mummy. And so with that, as you mentioned, Pragnya Chakshu, perceiving things with the eyes of divine knowledge, we'll keep that with us for a few chapters. And then in chapter 11, as we mentioned, we shall learn about Divya Chakshu. So hold on till then. But for now, we shall all practice seeing with the eyes of divine knowledge. Shortest gap from one session to the next, we shall meet you very soon tomorrow. That is Sunday, May 8, 2022, Mother's Day, as we mentioned in many countries. So we look forward to the next Bhagavad Gita study session. Thank you all again for attending today's one, and we'll meet in less than 24 hours. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.